From the 1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska, this is the End Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store.
Welcome in, everyone. I'm Danielle Shenk alongside our sports director, Kevin Sjuts, for the late edition of the End Report Husker Show, brought to you by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. So, Husker football, huh?
Oh, baby. That was in form of 2024, 2023, 2022. Keep going down the line. But the result was different, Danny. It was a close game when it came down to the very end, and Nebraska finally made a play to win a close one-score game. Cincinnati was driving with the football. Less than a minute to go. They took a shot at the end zone, and as that ball was in the air, you could sense the entire state and fan base just hold their breath.
I know we were here.
And Malcolm Hartzog flies in and makes a terrific catch at the goal line. Hung on to the football, never touched the ground, and the celebration in Kansas City and across Nebraska is on. Huskers start the year 20-17 with a victory over Cincinnati. I think any fan, no fan's going to complain about getting a season-opening win, especially, a lot of people wanted to see a big win from Nebraska. But Cincinnati played tough. They're a pretty physical team. They ran the football very effectively. But Nebraska gets out of there with the win. I think that the nature in which Nebraska had to buckle down and win it in the clutch, they exercised some demons tonight in Kansas City.
I mean, did you have any PTSD when it was coming down to those final moments?
Yeah.
We were feeling it here in the newsroom for those
You
of us
can
watching.
cite a number of games over the past 5 to 10 years that would maybe remind you of, where an opposing team had the football and a chance to take the game right out of Nebraska's grip. But the outcome's different.
Yeah. Do you think this is kind of a turning page for the Huskers with this kind of close win?
It could be. And I think it's not by any coincidence that the play that sealed the game is made by one of the veteran leaders and from the secondary, because that is a unit that is experienced, been with Matt Rule this entire time, 3 years, Malcolm Hartzog. Yeah, if there was anybody to basically take that situation and make sure it didn't slip out of Nebraska's fingers, it was going to be the secondary. Deshaun Singleton played very well tonight on the back end. He led the team in tackles. Hartzog makes that great play. And we saw some good thing on the edges with Andrew Marshall, the newcomer, and, of course, Sierra Wright, who's back and one of the captains of this team. So defensively, on the back end, Nebraska played very well.
Yeah, and I mean, a 52-yard kick to get us on the board. Surprised to see Kyle Cunanan. Kicker position was one that, many might not think of had some competition. Yeah,
and think about this. Nebraska wins the game by how many points? 3. Cunanan had Nebraska's first 2 scores of the season. He had a short field goal, and then in the beginning of the second quarter, first snap of the second quarter, he bangs in a 52-yarder. That's on the top 10 list in Nebraska history in terms of distance on a field goal made. So Kyle Cunanan has a nice little welcome to Nebraska in this game. And then, every point mattered in this contest. And that field goal, whether it was the short one at the beginning or the 52-yarder, if you don't have them, this is a totally different discussion we're having.
Yeah, and, every yard kind of counts, and that's what Emmett Johnson was doing. He got over 100 yards here. I mean, to think we almost lost him to the portal, right?
Yeah. He finished the game with 108 yards, had a career high in terms of attempts. And, Danielle, this is really interesting to talk about since you brought up Emmett Johnson. He carries the ball 28 times for 108. And the 28, that's a new career high. Keep in mind, Emmett in the middle of last year was just kind of in the middle of the running back shuffle. But when did it change for Emmett Johnson? It's when Dana Holgorsen came on staff. And Dana Holgorsen identified number 21 as a guy that he wanted to rely on and kind of run the offense through. And Dana said all fall camp leading up to the Cincinnati game, we want to run the football. In order to run the football, one, you have to have a pretty good line. And Nebraska's line, I thought, played fairly well tonight. And then secondly, you have to have a guy that can run the ball and run outside, run between the tackles. And Emmett Johnson became the featured back late last year, and you can tell he's made a nice step forward this year. So he starts his season 25-108, didn't get in the end zone, but then he was also used in the passing game too. 7 catches for 27 yards. So very productive for Emmett Johnson, and running the football, run the ball guy.
Yeah.
There's another word that sometimes is used with that phrase. got to be pretty happy tonight because Nebraska did commit to running the football.
Yeah, is there anyone else that kind of impressed you here tonight?
Well, I thought Archie Wilson, that was his first ever football game.
I loved how they were talking about that on air, is that, Coach Rule sent him to the Kansas City game for him to see his first in-person game, and then for this to be his first one to compete in is just like mind-blowing to think about.
This is incredible. Like, he has punted before, yes. He's played Australian rules football. He's never played in American football, like not even a high school JV game. This was his first ever football game, and it's played in front of 72,000 people in a venue that is pretty iconic, and fireworks are being shot off, and imagine the noise, and
his family was there, so even just
his
all
heart rate had to be through the roof, right?
You would
just
think.
imagine all the emotions that went along with the experience for Archie Wilson. So to pull a random name out, that somebody that impressed me, Archie Wilson has nerves of steel, apparently, because he kicks the ball 4 times tonight for 147. So he averages 37, but don't let that number, which isn't all that gaudy, don't let that mislead you, because for him it was all about situational kicking. And of Archie Wilson's 4 punts, 3 of them pinned Cincinnati inside the 20-yard line. So you're making the Bearcats have a long field, and I think he's maybe an unsung hero in this game. Nebraska's special teams, they grade out really well with this, because we just talked about Kyle Cunanan and Danielle, and now we're talking about Archie Wilson, and I didn't notice anything on kickoff, kick return, field goal. There was nothing that really seemed of concern with any of Nebraska's special teams. And considering where they were in 2024 to what we saw tonight, that is a pretty significant upgrade.
I was going to say, because, we've been you hear complaints about special teams all the time, but, tonight was a good one. Is there what are your thoughts about the defense? We've lost Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker. First impressions on the new look without them.
It's kind of tough because the way Cincinnati runs its offense, there's just so run-heavy, and I don't know that that's necessarily going to be what Nebraska faces in the Big Ten. The Big Ten has a historical perception of being a between-the-tackles, run-heavy league, but it's really turned into we're going to throw it around quite a bit with a little bit of balance. It's a little more pro-style now. So for me, it's really hard to have a full assessment of this defense right now, just because Cincinnati ran the ball a lot. Cincinnati outrushes Nebraska in this game. But I think with the back end, I probably have to watch the game back to really see what the push was like up front. Was Nebraska's defensive front, were they creating havoc? That's something that was talked about quite frequently in the preseason. And what did the line of scrimmage look like? Was it moving where Nebraska's going backwards? And if it is, are they going 1 yard or are they going 5 yards? So that's something, for the folks that want to watch the game back, just keep your eye on that to see where's the push and how did Nebraska hold up in that regard. But with the guys on the back end, you're going to be in a pretty good spot because they have experience back there. I'm looking at some of the defensive numbers right now. Deshaun Singleton, 7 tackles. Williams Winery making his Nebraska debut. He's a former 5-star who went to Missouri. Didn't go so well for him at Missouri.
Sometimes it's not the right school.
It wasn't a good fit. And he even admits that, it didn't bring out the best in him. So he leaves Missouri, ends up at Nebraska, who, oh, by the way, just happens to be playing in Kansas City, It's a pretty awesome story for Williams Winery. And in his first game at Nebraska, he finishes with 6 tackles. He is in on a TFL, breaks up a pass, has a quarterback hurry. I believe he had a fumble recovery tonight too. So Williams Winery had a very productive debut for Nebraska. That's exciting because he has just a terrific size. Like, he's just got great size for the position he plays, and he's got a pretty natural gift to be able to play on the defensive line.
I was going to see here. I had he's 6'7", 265 pounds, but pretty sturdy guy. So just thinking about the defensive line and then in comparison to the offensive line, we didn't, Raiola got sacked a couple of times.
Yeah, actually,
we didn't really
the
have
pass protection I thought was pretty good.
We didn't have any sacks on their quarterback, but man, he was kind of a slippery snake. He was getting around.
For sure. Looking at Nebraska, rushing-wise, 36 rushes in total, for 110. It's not the greatest average, but it seems like Nebraska was able to just kind of hang in there and not have too many breakdowns. There was still some procedural stuff for the Huskers that I know the coaching staff's not going to be too happy about when they go back and watch it on film. And Nebraska also goes 3 for 3 in the red zone. That's important. Every time they entered the red zone, they came away with points. That's going to be so key for this team because one thing that ailed them last year was sometimes when they got in the red zone, and even beyond, when they call it the yellow zone, green zone, whatever, they weren't always producing points, and that is so crucial. So Nebraska is able to take advantage of their opportunities. Close game. So now it's on to Akron, the home opener, next Saturday, September 6th, inside Memorial Stadium. I jokingly said for our morning newscast and our quick report with Nebraska football is that a lot of the fans that are going to be inside the stadium this upcoming Saturday, well, they were just in Arrowhead Stadium because that place was, from what we can tell, absolutely electric. The official attendance was over 72,000. What do you think? 71,000 Nebraska fans?
Yeah, and I think he said, Matt Rule said about 95% of the tickets were sold for Nebraska. Like Nebraska fans had bought them.
If you're watching on TV or if you're talking to your neighbor who went or any other social media that you come across, you're struggling to find a Cincinnati fan. It's like it's going to be a Where's Waldo picture.
Yeah, kind of like Travis Kelce.
Yeah, find the Cincinnati fan, which Kelce was there, by the way.
And I wrote the story about Kelce.
Taylor Swift was there.
The big news for the Swifties.
Patrick Mahomes was there, and Patrick Mahomes was down on the field. And, I mean, some of the young Nebraska players, 18-year-old guys, they're warming up on the field at Arrowhead Stadium.
Which is already big in itself.
And then you see Patrick Mahomes, one of the greatest football players currently in the game, just walking right by you. Like, that's just not something that happened. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And you're trying to get ready for the season opener. So trying to shift what our minds would be like in the body of a 17, 18-year-old football player about to take the field, the environment, the uncertainty of a season opener, trying to finalize in your brain what your assignments are, and then, oh, by the way, there's Pat. Yeah. But for Dylan Raiola, that's no big deal because he's just Pat to Dylan.
I was going to bring up Dylan. There was lots of talk about him improving on the offseason. I don't know if we really saw that tonight. Maybe it was a little bit of jitters, especially at the start. I'm not sure.
Hey, Dylan completed 79% of his passes. So though he didn't have any big splash plays, he completed 79% of his passes, and he did not have an interception. And I think that's just going to be key going forward. I've spoken about that on a few podcasts this week, that one of my barometers for this season is what is Dylan's completion percentage. Because if it's high, they're on schedule and they're moving the football. My number is 70. Can he be over 70 consistently throughout this year and starting at 79? That's a pretty effective day. His QB rating, 142.9. That's pretty impressive. So
yeah,
I do need to ask you, Danielle, because you're watching the TV broadcast, the Mahomes-Raiola talk. How frequent was it, and was it, in the words of Michael Bruntz, nauseating?
Yeah, probably a little bit, but more nauseating with the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift stuff. The amount of times that they're showing her.
Okay.
I get it. They just got engaged, and that's blah, 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 but
did they go to the Raiola Mahomes stuff time and time again during the broadcast?
Almost as equally as the Travis stuff. It was always kind of their default to bring that up, and they did do a side-by-side comparison. But as Husker fans, we've heard it. We're sick of it.
Yeah. With it being a national game on week 1, ESPN has to. You can't not, right? But I was just curious, how far do you lean into it? Because as any broadcast team would do. That's your storyline. You got to kind of go with it. Plus, it's Patrick Mahomes, and anything tied to Patrick or Travis Kelce, it's going to bring in more than just a football fan. It's going to bring in people that don't necessarily follow the sport as much. And for anybody that doesn't really care about Nebraska or Cincinnati, it can give them a little bit of interest or intrigue in the game, knowing that there's these comparisons between Patrick Mahomes and Dylan Raiola.
Yeah, and going back to your point about Dylan making passes and stuff, related to all of the stats, he stats show we had a good game, time of possession in favor of the Huskers, things like that. And the stats show a different game than what we saw and maybe felt, in my opinion. Like they were saying, I think maybe in the second half, Nebraska controlled time of possession by quite a bit compared to Cincinnati or majority of the game. And so it's so hard when you see the numbers compared to your but
the time of possession gave Nebraska fans just a sense of like we're on the brink of a victory because there's a double-digit lead in the second half and Nebraska's milking the clock, right? But then when Cincinnati scores early in the fourth quarter and then they get the ball back because Nebraska couldn't score, they couldn't execute the kill shot there on their final possession, right?
Yeah, and since he just made the most of when they had that time of possession.
Yeah, and then Cincinnati gets the ball back with 5 minutes to go, and they start marching down the field, and there's a defensive holding call on Nebraska. Who is that on? Malcolm Hartzog, and then he turns around and seals the win with the interception.
Yeah, that's the way to turn it around. I think that also happened with Singleton, is that he had gotten burned a play before and then turned around and made a big one. And that's, I think, what they had been saying in fall camp is just that they're learning from their mistakes.
Yeah.
Big time.
All in all, Nebraska football's back. And this discussion's totally different if the outcome's different.
Yes.
So folks are going to bed happy, and they're going to probably fantasize about okay, so one down, Akron. No win's a gimme in college football, right? But it's a game that Nebraska should be favored in. And then Houston Christian, it's a game Nebraska should be favored in. So going 3-0 is very, very realistic for Matt Rule and this team. And then you have Michigan coming into Lincoln in a nationally televised, high-profile game that will be on 10/11. It'll be a CBS broadcast on Saturday afternoon in late September in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's going to be a huge contest. So in the psyche of the Nebraska fan, 3-0, it's within reach. And then if you get the fourth over what could be a ranked team at the time, Michigan's in the rankings right now, you don't want to assume that they're going to continue to stay in there, but they may. You could have a pretty big moment for Nebraska football. If the Huskers get that one, then you can start fantasizing about what this season could really be.
And these two games are big to help build that confidence. I think this was maybe a little bit of a rocky start or, just much closer than we wanted it to be, obviously. But confidence, I think, will be key for these players, especially going into that big Michigan game. Yeah, absolutely. And, you look at some of the newcomers that Nebraska rolled onto the field. They have that anxiousness, some of the jitters, and plus they have some tape to watch themselves, instead of just going back from practice and looking at how you were matched up against one of your teammates, you get to see how you looked against Cincinnati. Yeah. And so a guy like Williams Winery, what does this do for his confidence? It should do nothing but very positive things. And you go down the line, Nebraska played a lot of guys that have never suited up for the Big Red before. Desan McCullough, 4 tackles tonight. They've got Keona Davis, a new black shirt. He's out there, causing some havoc on the defensive line. Marquez Watson-Trent. So I didn't mention the 2 touchdowns Nebraska scored, both caught by newcomers, transfers that joined the team, Isaiah Hunter and Dane Key. Yes, and so when it comes to I lost my train of thought. Big confidence, and let's see. Okay, Akron. We'll talk Akron. The little pregame that they have before now. Excited, help build some of that pizzazz before the home game here. Right.
Hey, well, the city's going to be abuzz, right? Plus, it's a night game. And it's not going to be a kickoff at 8 o'clock at night where you have the entire day, but you have a Saturday, a free day, and, the restaurants, the economy is really going to enjoy having a night game. And plus, Nebraska fans that didn't go to Kansas City are going to be very excited to be inside Memorial Stadium. And, by the way, this is going to be a totally different experience inside Memorial Stadium because they're selling alcohol now. They've got new concessions there. There are a number of new policies. And you can read about those on 1011now.com. But also, it's just there is going to be a fascination with this upcoming Nebraska football game against Akron. So forget about the opponent if that doesn't do a whole lot for you. It's just the fact that it's going to be game day in Lincoln, Nebraska, and you're going to get up in the morning and you'll see all the Red-ins, the flags are all across the neighborhood, and all the doors are going to be open on all the establishments downtown, and everybody's going to be in a good mood. It's game day, and then you'll see what Nebraska football feels like and what the experience is like at night. And plus, it's a night game, so they're going to have the drone show again. I think that they are, right?
That's always a fan favorite.
And then they'll have the lights will go out in between the third and fourth quarter, so it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And going into that experience with a 1-0 record is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I remember my thought, it's 1 o'clock here as we're filming this. It's, as Matt Rule said, you always see your biggest jump into that second week. And maybe it's just like the Nebraska volleyball game, it was a huge jump from Pitt to Stanford in terms of what we kind of saw. I mean, Nebraska volleyball had a thumping on Stanford. They're this weekend playing against Lipscomb in the Love Invitational, is that right? In Nashville tomorrow night at 7?
Yeah, Nebraska is going to play Nebraska volleyball. And if Matt Rule can make the jump that Danny Busboom Kelly's team made from 1 to 2, holy, Akron better be pretty deep, because they're going to get a hurting. Because this volleyball team is incredible. They play Friday. Nebraska volleyball plays Friday at Lipscomb, and then they'll play on the Broadway block party in downtown Nashville at Bridgeport Arena. That's going to be a fun event. Nebraska is going to take on Kentucky. Kentucky coached by Craig Skinner, a former Nebraska assistant. And when Skinner was here in Lincoln, who was on the team? Danny Busboom Kelly.
So
pretty fun storyline.
Yeah, a little old foe there. So you can watch the Lipscomb game on ESPN Plus, and then the Kentucky game on ABC. Anything that you want to add about volleyball or football?
Volleyball, enjoy the ride, because this team is pretty incredible. Rebecca Alec, very happy for her too. A Waverly grad, homegrown talent, who is the AVCA National Player of the Year, had 20 kills in Nebraska's wins at the AVCA First Serve. And Rebecca she's really taken her game to the next level. I love the emotion she plays with. And you look at some of the personalities on this team, no coach or nobody is trying to hold anybody back. Yeah. They're letting Laney Choboy be Laney Choboy, and they're letting Rebecca Alec be Rebecca Alec. And it's such an interesting collection, not only of talent, but personalities. And I think that's what makes this team very endearing. I personally am just fascinated by their play because they're at an insanely high level, and they're doing some things that I don't think college volleyball's really ever seen before. So the volleyball is amazing, but now you're factoring in you have just all these very unique personalities, and they're big personalities, and they're playful, and they're not afraid of the public eye, and they're also comfortable in their skin, and they seem to all really get along. And so that just makes it a pretty dynamic environment, Nebraska volleyball. So the seasons always go by so quick. I guess my number one takeaway on this is this has potential to be a very special season. So don't let this season go by quick. Try to cherish every time you get to watch Nebraska volleyball.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so incredible to see a team that has so many different weapons. You almost feel bad for Pitt when you're watching Olivia Babcock just take swing after swing after swing, and that they always just constantly go to her. But I think,
do you feel bad for them? I mean,
well,
they've got Olivia Babcock. I'm not going to feel bad for a team that has Olivia Babcock.
Yeah, I told Bill Rentschler, in the long run, that's going to be hard on her shoulder. Maybe meaning surgery down the road from how many hits. Because when you're Olivia Babcock, sure, that's cool, but you'd like to be able to pull a little bit of weight for your team. But I think that's the great thing about the Huskers, is that everyone's a weapon, really.
Yeah, nobody's having 81 swings in a night for Nebraska volleyball. Nobody's gonna have 40. Well, yeah. I take that back. 40. Yeah, somebody's gonna have 40.
Especially if you go 5.
Yeah. So that's not a true statement. But the point is, who's Nebraska's best player? It's Harper Murray, or Bergen Riley,
or Andy Jackson.
That's the thing.
You're but this person.
They have 3 Olivia Babcocks, if not 4, because the 3 AVCA Player of the Year candidates, Bergen, Andy Jackson, and Harper Murray, they are elite. Rebecca Alec is playing elite, and Laney Choboy had a very good debut as Nebraska's libero in the first weekend. So there's just so much at play here. They're special.
And
excited to watch them play again on Friday and then that Sunday game. It's going to be on national TV, and it's not just the Nebraska fan base. I think college volleyball, as they get exposed to this team, there's potential for everybody to fall in love with this squad.
Yeah, I think they had against that Stanford match, or maybe it was the Pitt match, they over 771,000 people watched. The most watched volleyball game that didn't have an NFL lead-in.
Wow.
Like, that's so crazy that so many people, I mean, as Husker fans, we're like, of course we're watching Nebraska volleyball, but there's other people too. So many other people that I think, out of state, and you've seen the signs probably around Bob Devaney. I traveled from yada yada to come watch them. Like, it's crazy the pull Nebraska volleyball has.
Yeah. Volleyball's on the rise. Obviously having a professional league in the United States helps increase the interest in it. And the fact that the U.S. won gold in 2021, that increases the interest in it. And then if you even look at the lower levels, well, high school, it's becoming it is the most popular sport played by females right now in the nation, the volleyball. So like it is just, its growth is exponential right now. And so it's not just like, wow, Nebraska. It's just the sport is growing, and at the forefront of its growth is Nebraska. And one of the pioneers in all of that is John Cook. And then I think Cook would probably share with us pretty openly and candidly that, the stadium match is an integral part in it. Having 92,000 fans inside Memorial Stadium, and then the national attention that event created. I feel like the sport just exploded ever since Nebraska played an outdoor college volleyball match at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, and then you see other high schools in other places. Millard did it for their schools. Well, I could talk volleyball all night, and so we're gonna
all morning
end this here
because we're into the morning hours now.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Kevin.
You bet.
Thanks for those of you who watched, and for more Husker coverage, you can visit our website and follow us on all our social platforms. From our newsroom to wherever you are, we'll see you on the next stream.
You've been listening to the Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch the Report on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m. and download the 1011 Now app.